go from there? This book follows Germans from the Second World War through the partition of their country and reunification in 1990 to the present, navigating a series of moral challenges and contradictions. This process was set in motion by the war and its legacies, but went much further and would carve its way through family, work, foreign policy, and the environment until effectively all spheres of life were framed in terms of right and wrong. This is a story of conflicts about guilt, shame, and making amends, rearmament and pacifism, tolerance and racism, rights and duties, fairness and inequality, and material comfort and care for the natural world. My book begins that story not at the end of the war, but in the middle, in the winter of 1942 to 43. Germany's unconditional surrender to the Allies on May 8, 1945, marked the formal end of the war in Europe. In many respects, it was not, however, Hour Zero as it came to be known. Hearts and minds were not uniforms that could simply be taken off. People carried their experiences of the war with them into peacetime. Starting the story in 1942 allows us to observe the Nazis' Volksgemeinschaft, the people's racial community, at a critical juncture, the year when Germany turned from bullets to gas chambers to exterminate the Jews, and when the tide of war began to turn against the Reich. The Nazis' power was formidable because they ruled through consent as well as coercion. They enjoyed broad support from the middle class and sections of the working class, as well as from landed elites and big business, in addition to terrorizing enemies with the Gestapo, Geheime Staatspolizei, or secret police, and the SS, Schutzstaffel, the brutal paramilitary body. By 1939, most Aryan Germans belonged to one Nazi organization or another. Order, discipline, and the restoration of national honor and strength were popular ideals, as was the exclusion of racial, political, and social misfits from the people's community. While not everyone cheered the outbreak of another war, almost everyone saw it as necessary and just. Yet SS units began to execute Jews and prisoners of war from the moment of the attack on Poland on September 1, 1939, and the invasion of the Soviet Union, Operation Barbarossa, on June 2, 1941, was launched as a war of extermination. In September of that year, Hitler ordered the deportation of all Jews remaining in the Reich. It was now that the Nazis scaled up the gas chambers they had used to murder people with disabilities inside Germany and created extermination camps in Poland, where Jews from across the continent were killed on arrival. Chełmno, the first of these killing centers, started operating in December 1941. Belzec, Sobibor, Treblinka, and Auschwitz, the largest, would follow. Behind the 200,000 Germans who became perpetrators of genocide and other war crimes stood the regular army, which often assisted and colluded in mass murder, and behind them was in turn a population that overwhelmingly supported the regime. For millions of Germans, then, the Third Reich was not an external stranglehold on their otherwise good selves, as many liked to pretend after 1945. They were part of it, and had to redefine themselves in order to regain a sense of being good. It was the reversal of fortunes beginning in 1942 that made some Germans take their first step. In the Reich, cities were subject to ever more relentless Allied bombing from the air, while on the Eastern Front, the German war effort ground to a halt, ending with the surrender of the Sixth Army at Stalingrad on February 2, 1943. Parents began to ask what their sons were dying for. Stories about Nazi atrocities acquired a new significance as vulnerability prompted fear of accountability. Today we know that area bombing had military objectives. At the time, however, many Germans believed that it was directly related to the persecution of the Jews, sparking radically different